My name is Patrick Lind Lutic from a small fishing village called Chignik. It's located 500 miles southwest of Anchorage, and I was born and raised in a little village, a fishing camp, and majority of my life. But last year I had commercial fish was back in 1992, and it was a different way of life, living off the land and the sea. We had been brought up in way to subsist off the land and sea. I mean, that's the way we had our lifestyle. Now it's a change living in the city. We have to run to the store to buy the meat or fish, whatever we needed. To me, the conveniences we have now is quite a change, because I used to pack my water when I was just a child, and it was more physical. And of course, we had no TV, no phone, no radio, so we constantly were putting away food for the long winters. We always had something to do. We were out at the lake fishing or traveling on land by foot to go hunt, looking for moose or caribou. And that's our main diet was fish, moose, and caribou. So I think it's a lot healthier because there's no food preservatives on the catch that we had processed, and we're always putting it away for the winter. We dry the meat, smoke the meat with salmon. It was just a more healthier way of lifestyle, I think, because we always had the wonderful fresh air, the ocean air, and of course you had all the sea life. You had the clams, the salmon, the seal. That's another type of meat that I really enjoy eating. The seal oil has its good qualities, and so certain foods have good qualities, especially plants, berries. It's just a wonderful way of life living out in the village. Being in the village, we were able to go hunt anytime we wanted to. But in Anchorage here, we have to get our license, get registered, and get a hunting tag, which is quite a little process. But I still do get to go hunt. But we have laws and regulations that we must follow. Back in the village, we didn't have to go by that type of thing when I was growing up. We just went and hunt anytime we wanted to. So, and then of course there's a time frame that we're allowed to harvest going through the government and state now. So it's not always open season like it used to be back home. So it's quite a different lifestyle being transitioned from a village to a city.
It's got its values, because I think the old way of surviving off the land and the sea, you're able to sustain life longer than having to depend on a regular grocery store. The way I was brought up, we had to pack our water, we had to chop our wood, and one thing that's a convenience for me today is the water faucet. You just turn the knob or lift the handle, and all of a sudden there's water. So I remember my packing water days. It was a backbreaker. It was a good way of life, I think. The air was cleaner, but now we live in a city. You can smell exhaust. It's a change, and it is a culture change, actually. I kind of adapted to that, just because I did lose my parents when I was quite young, and we were getting transitioned from the village to Anchorage. In the summer, we'd have to go back to the village and fish. So fall time, we'd go back to Anchorage or Kodiak, and then go to school until I was old enough to go on my own. I'm getting pretty good recognition for the artwork that I do through the local corporations, and being a teacher for, 30-some years now. Working with students and sharing this information with them. They enjoy it. It's like, it's a way of escaping the negative world. And so, yeah, it's like therapy. And when I'm sitting there tying flies for hours. That's another therapy form. When I'm painting, it's just like picking up a good book and reading it, so it's just a way of being creative is one thing that I like to enjoy because I like to create unique art. My passion is painting. Right now I'll be starting a new series, limited edition native art based on our culture. Maybe more hunting scenes, fishing scenes, something with action. That's what I prefer to paint, and instead of something just stationary, like a bowl of fruit. Well, here we have a Olympic style 18th century bent wood visor replica. Actually, the marks are called petaloids. Any leaflet design depicts life. The continuous line that goes around this visor means eternity. On the very bottom rim, you see the triangular motif. That's a killer whale teeth. And the beads do represent a seal pelt or a sea otter, that's been returned from a kill. And so that was their way of form of payment. They didn't have a money system back in the 18th century for the native hunters that went out and got the fur, because that's when they had the Russian fur trade with the Europeans. Now this wood is a birch wood replica. The actual wood that they used was cedar. Cedar was lightweight. It had the natural wood oil, so it actually was good for being around moisture, around the sea. And so you could tell this is a miniature recreation where I have to soak the wood and join the wood in the back. You can see it better underneath here, where it's joined in the back. So it's a process, like a 3D process. And when you work on a full-size visor, which is a lot larger, it's almost the same identical process where you have to soak the wood and then it actually gets workable, bendable. If you don't, it cracks. So that's why the process is kind of be a lengthy process. So then the dark colors, like I said again, anything black would be like octopus ink. All the blues would be like from a blueberry or blackberry, natural plants that grew. The ochre, the red ochre was another natural color that they used because they use it on the gear, spears, their shields, and the headgear. And so it's just a wonderful way of making use of the land and what it had to offer, or the animals. Sometimes animal blood was even used. It's just not for decoration. It all has meaning. There's hundreds of other designs they use, like the curl, depicts wind form. The circle dot would be eye of our creator. Repetitious dots, like 3 at a time, and then like 3 at a time again. That represents ancestors of the hunter who wore these type of headgear, or it's just a way of recording their way of history back in the old days. You can actually see where the artist or the creator had put a mark, and usually it's a petroglyph or some sort of mark to identify the owner's belonging. So same thing with the visors. Each one was different. Not everyone had the same design, and the reason why that, everybody knew what hat or what visor belonged to a certain person. The more elaborate ones, the more decorative ones were mainly for chiefs, the village leaders. So, and of course we had the short visors that were maybe half the size, and they were a lot shorter. That's the warrior type headgear. It was a lot of the same markings were used on the shorter ones too as well. But like I said, a lot of them had different designs. And to this day, when you look into a museum and look at the full-size visors, they are different. You will not find two visors of the same, so which is really interesting. native art was pretty much self-taught, and when I first started making these little wood visors, the local and state museums found out what I was trying to do, and I was real fortunate. They invited me down and to look at artifacts, and the more I studied the artifacts, which I continue to do to this day, it's been about 30 some years, I'm able to gain this information by handling the artifacts, taking notes, taking photographs, and the information that I do learn, I share it with my students. So I'm a cultural art teacher. So I'd like to put myself at that status, not just an ordinary art teacher. I call it my extraordinary art teacher. So there's a lot of history involved, but the most preferred wood they used back then is cedar, because cedar, when you walk into a cedar home, you smell this natural cedar oil. So oil and moisture don't mix. So this is why, and not only that, it's lightweight, and it lasts a lot longer because of the natural wood oil on it. And not only that, visors were made of the light wood, but the throwing board and the spear with the arrowhead, with what they call the atlatl, and that was their main hunting gear. The visor served the purpose of keeping the sunlight, the glare from the ocean, because you're sitting right on the water, and the water's right here when you're sitting, and so it protects your face from the harsh environment, because you just tilt your head, it'll block the wind, and also when you go like this to your ear, you can hear louder. So this elongated wood visor acts like it amplifies sound from distance, so they were able to go hunt when it's foggy and you couldn't even see ahead of you, like 20 feet away. They'd just bring their kayak down to the water and then just paddle into the fog, and they had no GPS, no compass, but they had this elongated visor. They'd have to just turn and listen for the shoreline breaking, and so they always knew what direction the shoreline was. So it's kind of interesting history behind this visor. The history of the Alutiiq, and of course the sad dark history, what they went through, not only way back in the day, but 17th, 18th century, when the Russians pretty much dominated the hunters for their hunting skills. So they created this Russian fur trade with the Europeans. And then not only that, the transition from the World War II event, it was just, it was tragic to see so many families pulled away, separated, and the hardships they had to follow through. And a lot of stories like that not being shared, I was just talking about earlier. People don't like to talk about it, that's why it's not heard of, but this is all part of life history. I think we need to take a stand and maybe speak more of these events happen. We can't change history. I think that's a part of our decision to have forgiveness in our hearts for what has been done. So I think the big part of having forgiveness in your heart is really important for everyone to understand. In order to exist here in Anchorage, you have to work. Sometimes some people do have 2 jobs. At one time I had 3 jobs, which can actually take a toll on you physically, mentally. There's a lack of sleep, and it's just you become routine, like a robot kind of thing. It's just, you have to be here at a certain time, you have to be there at a certain time. But thank God I don't do that anymore. And then I had to really make a choice when I walked off my first job. And I was thinking, remembering what my grandmother had told me about going through hard times in life. A lot of our family misses her, because she was kind of our mentor, you know, because in my family, we lost our parents when we were young, and to me, I was lost, but she had so much love in her heart. She knew I was
uprising artist. She loved my art, my painting, my little sculptures out of wood, my little visors. This is who inspired me to create these little visors. But anyway, the words that she said that really rang in my head was, if you ever come across hard times, take pride in your culture and believe who you are. And for the longest time, I was kind of stumped. And why did she say that? Why did she tell me that? And I'm thinking, she knew I was an uprising artist for one thing. I have to concentrate on my cultural arts. So that's my story.